Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rachelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to episode 81 of How to Live Slow. I'm Rachelle and it's really great to have you here today. I love doing these episodes where I reflect on the season that's just ended and set some intentions for the upcoming season. If you have been following this podcast for a while, you know that I started this feature at the end of last winter, where I reflected on winter and what I learned and set some intentions for spring. And then I did another one at the end of spring, and now I'm doing this one at the end of summer. And this is really an exciting one because I'm starting to see the fruits of all the work that I started, ironically, because we're coming into autumn. The seeds that I planted in winter, the intentions that I set to live more seasonally are starting to become more apparent, like the benefits of it are starting to become much more apparent, which is really, really cool and kind of funny because it's autumn, which is harvest season in a sense, which is exactly the time when you would start to see the benefit of the previous months and seasons' work and effort and growth. So here we are. Now, if you want to do your own seasonal reflection and intention setting, then I encourage you to just kind of explore some of the things that I explore here. You can definitely read a lot more information over on my blog about how, I've written up a whole blog about particularly the winter reflections, spring intentions one, because it's got some information there about what cyclical and seasonal living really is and how it can benefit us. Now, just a little reminder here is that seasonal living is seasons of nature. So you've got like winter, spring, summer, and autumn. But you also have, and that's why I say sometimes I interchange seasonal with cyclical, because the cycles of our bodies kind of mirror the seasons of nature. So you've got menstruation, the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, the luteal phase, and on it goes. And they match. Winter menstruation would be like the new moon, which is a time of rest and reflection. So if you're not experiencing a menstruation, then you can follow the cycles of the moon to mirror this. And so it's really, really quite a cool way of doing it. So the new moon is the time of reflection and rest. Then you've got spring, which is your follicular phase, which is the waxing moon. And this is where you are, spring cleaning, you're ready for action, you've got a lot of energy because you've just taken some time to rest, and you are feeling like that burst of new energy. You're ready to start new things, make plans and book appointments, amp up the exercise, all of that stuff. And then you hit summer, which is your ovulation phase, which would be the full moon. So this is like socializing, being visible, being seen, being out there. It's like a real growth season. It's all about socializing. You might find yourself unable to focus a lot on work things. So you might find yourself really keen to get out and about and do fun things, but you just can't sit down to focus or be creative or write anything or whatever your work is. You might find when you're ovulating, this is the hardest time for you to actually focus. And then you've got autumn, obviously, it comes after summer, which we're about to head into now, in the southern hemisphere, that is. And this is equivalent to the luteal phase or the waning moon. And this is all about completing the cycles. There's a lot of creativity here, which, women get a bad rap for having PMS and being ragey, but there's a lot of wisdom in that. And it's a different kind of wisdom than what you would think of automatically. But when you live to the seasons, there's a lot of wisdom in the autumn phase. This is a time for celebrating all of the hard work that you've done in spring and summer. And, you get prepared to rest and you want to finalize things, finish things off so that you can, and, like I said, reflect and celebrate, and so that you can get prepared to rest throughout the winter season. I love doing it this way. And what's really cool is, like, if you think about each season of nature, say autumn, you would then experience your hormonal cycles 3 to 4 times within that season. So you would have naturally ebbs and flows throughout autumn. It's not going to all be a creative time or a completion time, like a time when you're completing everything, but you would have a really intense, like it's more intensified. So if it's autumn and you're in your luteal phase and or the moon is in its waning phase, you might feel an intense pull to be really creative. You might just get bursts of inspiration, or you might just get bursts of energy where you just want to declutter everything and rearrange the house and all of that stuff. Equally, you might feel senses of, you know what, I really feel like being social and catching up and unfocused. You might feel really unfocused in certain phases. You know, not saying that autumn, the season of autumn is only going to give you, you're only going to benefit from those particular, you know, autumn things, because you are still going to have a natural cycle and things do still change throughout it, but it will be an intensified. So that's really cool. I'm really loving playing with this way of living. And I'm really, like I said at the start, I'm really starting to see the benefits of it. So like I said, if you do want to have a go at this, I guess, kind of way of doing things, I do have on my website, on the blog, there's the Winter Reflections Spring Intentions. Now, if you go to the bottom of that blog post, there's a little button there. It says Winter Workbook. If you click on that, you don't need to have an email in there. It will just be an instant download. You click on that, and I mean, I'm going to probably update it so that there's one for each season. But you click on that and it kind of gives you an idea of exactly what I'm talking about, how to do this reflection thing. So the first question is like, what happened in your life this winter or this autumn or spring or whatever season you're talking about? And then you kind of go through, there's a whole bunch of questions there for you to kind of do that reflection, and it's really lovely. So in terms of summer, so for me, summer was here in Australia. It was like the opening up of a lot of states. The borders opened. We were able to travel a little bit more. And my intention was to really embrace, you know, we're really fortunate that summer is, you know, our longest holiday, school holidays of the year. And for my family, which was really cool, it was our first end of a school year school holiday together. So my oldest son, Max, started prep last year. So we had the 6-week school holidays together, and we really set the intention. Like, I did a lot of work in that last term of school to get the podcast and the blog and my Instagram and my emails and everything all sorted so that I could fully step away and be in the summer energy and be with my family, which was a beautiful way of doing things. Now, keeping in mind, summer is like the highest intensity exercise. It's enjoying being visible. It's being creative and growing, socializing. And it's a pretty unfocused time where you might find it really hard to focus on either creative work or, you know, finances, or you might not even be able to sit down and read a book because you just feel like you can't concentrate and you easily get bored. Or you might even feel a little bit foggy-minded because you're just in, and I definitely experienced this. Like, I knew that I had a lot of podcasts coming out and I was just like, oh, that's right, I've got to post that on Instagram about that. And I would just forget. And I just was so connected in the relationship side of life that work felt a little bit like muddy, or I felt like a bit groggy about it. So in summer, that was my plan, was to just spend some slow and delicious catch-ups with family and friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. We were able to cross the border to see some family, grandparents, and see my brother, and it was just great. We had the best summer holiday ever. We were out and about. We did a lot of things. We had a lot of big days. And something that was so lovely that I have been waiting for the kids to be old enough to be able to do was that we kind of threw our routines, our sleep routines, out the window, which was really, really cool. And it meant that we spent some time away camping, and, you know, the kids were outside until right before bed, and it was dark, and, you know, like, we were outside experiencing the sunset. Now, my kids are very early risers, so I tend to be quite strict in them going to bed, you know, 7 o'clock at the latest. But over summer, obviously the sun sets a little bit closer to 8. And they still get up at 4:30, but that's okay because that's what naps are for, and it's the holidays. But it was so, so lovely to spend some time outside of an evening, like eating our dinner outside. And then instead of going straight after dinner to go shower and bed and read books and things, we would play games and go outside, and the boys would play cricket and soccer, and we'd go and run around or whatever and have that extra hour of outdoor time as the temperature was dropping. And the sunlight is just such a nice time of year, like such a nice time of day in summer here in Brisbane, where it can be roasting hot throughout the day. But getting outdoors right before bed was it was beautiful. And it's one of the things that I really have been craving. And one day, and I'm hoping that next year we will do more, evening walks throughout our suburb and throughout wherever we are if we're on holidays, and just go for evening walks after dinner, whether we're staying at the beach, going for beach walks or things like that. And as the kids get older, I know that that's going to be a really special time of day. So I really, really loved that. I loved the summer season. We did so many fun things. And some of the stuff that I didn't do though, I had intended to sit down and do some more writing on my book. And I had intended to do something that I was going to call the Slow Summer Social, which was going to be a series of kind of Zoom calls where we could all come together maybe once a fortnight throughout summer and just chat about motherhood and slow living and and I was going to sort of teach a few or talk about a few common things around slow living and why it might be so hard, and, setting boundaries and saying no and learning to, I guess, live with more intention and all of that stuff. I was really looking forward. It was going to be really fun. I hadn't quite fleshed it out, but that was what I was going to do because I was stepping away. I had, 6 podcast episodes pre-recorded, so I didn't have a massive amount of workload to do for that side of things. But I just couldn't get myself focused. I couldn't get myself into it. And I couldn't sit down to write my book. I was just I was so scattergories that I was literally my brain just could not switch into work mode. And I had intended, one thing that I did do only just this week was that I wanted to run the Matriarch Way again. And I had set the dates to start in February once school went back. But then halfway through January, it was announced that our school year would be delayed starting by 2 extra weeks because we were about to hit the COVID peak since the borders had opened and we had huge case numbers. So they delayed starting school back, which meant that my intended start date for the Matriarch Way was pushed back. And I was kind of sitting with it thinking, okay, well, that's actually better because I'm not really in work mode yet. I really need a couple of weeks to get the cog spinning again. And when I went to do it, I just felt this it's not right. I'm not really ready to do it. I don't want to host it this way. It doesn't feel like it's the best version of what it could be. And I just felt like I wanted to give it a little bit more. I wanted it to be easier to access. I wanted it to be cheaper and I wanted it to be easier to access the content. I didn't want mums to feel stressed about trying to find time to attend 1 or 2 1-hour calls per week to do the content. And it's quite intensive. It's quite heavy lifting emotionally. So I wanted to do it in a different way, but I couldn't quite land on what that was. But I knew that I didn't really want to run it the way that it had been because I felt that, I just felt that it wasn't quite hitting what I wanted, the outcomes that I wanted for my students to get. And right at the time when it was due to start, something landed with me. It was actually on the 22nd of February, so a couple of days ago, which everybody said that was a bit of a magic day. And I probably experienced that. I was sitting there and just all these ideas rushed in. And one of them was to run the Matriarch Way in a new way, to reduce the price by 2/3. So it's now only $98. And instead of hosting all of the workshops in one week after the other and having 4 intensive workshops, I've started an Instagram page. It's a private Instagram page where if you just request to follow me, if you're already on Instagram, it means you don't have to have another login. You don't have to remember your password for anything. You don't need a new app or another website. You're not going to forget that you have paid for this and forget to do the work. And I'm going to post everything onto Instagram, the daily prompts for and the workbook questions. And I'll do the videos, the workshops, instead of doing them as 1 or 1.5 hour intensive workshops, they're going to be bite-sized videos. So there's going to be probably 10 to start with, and they'll just be 10 minutes each, and you can literally binge them and watch them all in one go, and they'll give you lots of ideas. And then there's the questions for you to work through so that you can apply the work to your actual own life. And then, so that's the content side of things sorted. And I was really happy. I'm so glad that this landed for me. And then after that, once a month, I'll host a drop-in coaching call. I'll start it at, say, 7:30 p.m. and I'll just run it until everybody has had all their questions answered. Everybody who is on the call can get a bit of coaching with whatever they need. You can ask me anything that you need to ask me about the content. If you're not sure what the Matriarch Way is, it's my self-leadership and slow living kind of guide for gentle mothers or flexible mothers. And it kind of just works through all of the things that create this situation for mothers where we feel stressed and burnt out and resentful and unappreciated. And we work through that and what that might mean for us. And we learn how to shift and change that without having to have arguments with our partners and without having to feel like we're coming up against, it's kind of like a relationship strengthening thing. And it's about learning to receive and ask for support and help. And there's so much goodness in there. It's also about learning how to have boundaries and saying no to the things that stress you out and giving yourself permission to be the one in charge of your own life. Because, yeah, that's something that I think if you're approaching parenting from a gentle perspective, I think that often that means that you probably think of yourself as easygoing, you're the flexible one, you're doing everything for the family and the family's needs, which often means that your own desires might get kind of left behind, and it can feel like there's just no space to focus on the things that are important to you outside of those motherhood like jobs or that caring work. But so we don't get too sidetracked. Basically, all of that's to say I did that so that it becomes more accessible, and it was one of the things that I intended. I set the intention that over summer, I wanted to have an idea of some new fresh way to provide the Matriarch way. And I really feel that landed. So I'm so happy with that. Obviously, if you're interested, it's lifetime access. You can get, it's $98. Just click. There's a link in the description box for this episode or on the blog post on my website for this episode so that you can join that. If you've got any other questions, just DM me, of course. But yeah, so that was one of my summer intentions. And I feel like I kind of nailed most of them. Now, it's interesting, and here's where it gets really interesting actually, is that, you know, I'm a bit of an obsessive reader, as you probably know. I get into a topic and I buy every book I can find on a particular topic. And I also love listening to podcasts. And I happened to listen to an episode, or actually a whole series by Lucy Peach. And it's about menstrual cycle awareness. And it was kind of like, I think there's 5 episodes. So there's an introduction episode and then one for each of the 4 phases. Obviously, this is something that I'm into. And she kind of mirrored what I've already said earlier in the episode about the 4 phases kind of mirroring the seasons. And I have outlined the 4 phases of the cycle to match like the cycle of slow living as well. And she's kind of called them her own thing. So I'm loving seeing all these people pop up with this really cool way of living life and really being fully empowered to live seasonally. And so she actually, where it's, you know, the spring, she calls do, which is all about the doing of life and getting started with stuff, learning, focus, concentration. Then there's the give phase, which is summer. And then take is autumn and dream is winter. So I loved it because there's only the 5 episodes and she kind of goes through it all a little bit more in her own way of looking at it. And she's got some really cool guests on there as well. And I was like, yeah, this is great. And then, but she mentions a book. This is where I was going with the book. She mentions a book called The Optimized Woman by Miranda Gray. And the book, I ordered it and I've started reading it. It says, using your menstrual cycle to achieve success and fulfillment. And so she has also called the 4 phases her own thing. So her version is spring is the dynamic phase. And, you know, that's what Lucy calls do. Expressive phase is summer. The creative phase is autumn. And the reflective phase is winter. So I want to focus a little bit here about what she says around the creative phase. She says it's more commonly known as the premenstrual phase, can be the optimum time for creativity, inspiration, out-of-the-box thinking, problem identification and problem solving, and assertiveness. So I found, and then when she says about summer or the expressive phase, is it's around the time of ovulation and can be optimum time for communication, empathy, productivity, teamwork, supporting others, and creating interdependent relationships. So the fact that I set my intention to do some book writing and I just could not focus on it kind of makes sense, right? Because here we are going into autumn, which is actually, you know, according to Miranda, is the creative phase. So I'm really looking forward. And so I've changed the intentions that I set for autumn. So I'm not beating myself up for not being able to focus on writing my book. And I'm setting the intention that I will focus more on being creative and creating the things that I want to create, like writing the book, like recording some solo episodes of my podcast. So all of autumn is going to be solo episodes, just going to be me. Goodness knows what I'm going to talk about. If you've got any ideas, please send me a message, and I'm taking requests because, I need them. But if you've got anything that you want to know more about around slow living, self-leadership, the seasonal stuff, do let me know. I'm planning to, I'm going to be recording in the next week or two. I'm going to be recording all of the content for the Matriarch Way. And excitingly, I am going to be hosting my seasonal retreat. The autumn retreat is coming up. It's on the 15th of March. It's an Australian nighttime time slot. Now, let me just check my calendar. I want to make sure that I tell you the right time. I've set it for 7:30 p.m. on the 15th of March. So this is going out. This podcast episode will be live on the 2nd of March, or that would be today, obviously. So you've got 2 weeks. If you're listening to this in the future, it's the 15th of March, 2022. Now, the exciting part is that the retreat is free. It's a complimentary thing. It's my gift to you. I invite you to come along. It's going to be so much fun. I'm really looking forward to hosting this. It's about 2 hours. If it's going to be recorded, that's the only thing. I just want you to know that if you do come along on Zoom, it's going to be recorded, but you are so invited. There's no sales pitch or anything like that. Full disclosure, at some point in the end of March or early April, I am going to be opening up a brand new, I guess it's a membership thing. It's going to be seasonal living, where we are going to be doing, more of this work around planning our lives around the seasons and cycles of nature of ourselves. But I will email you about that separately if you are on my email list. So that's the catch, I guess. If you come along to the retreat, you'll need to give me your email address so I can send you all the details, which will mean that you'll receive the emails about the seasonal living membership. However, not to worry about that, because that's, for the future. For now, my autumn retreat, I'm so excited because actually, you know what? Autumn is my favorite season. To me, from what I've gathered, it's a time to reap the rewards of all the outward energy, reflect and celebrate on the ending of another seasonal cycle. Now, remembering that autumn is actually the end of the cycle. So winter is, to my mind, the start of a new cycle. It's the resting phase. It's like things have died off and, menstruation, winter, it's all starting fresh. So the weather's changing. We don't really have too much changing of colours of nature in Brisbane, but I do love seeing everybody posting their autumnal photos. I guess, I feel like with autumn though, you can get a sense of agitation, that PMS feeling of like, I've missed my opportunity. I wanted to reach a goal and I haven't. You might feel a bit frustrated. You might feel the surge of rage or a feeling of like, I want to burn it all down. And I do think that ragey feeling that comes in that autumn or that PMS phase is because we're not living aligned and not honouring the ebbs and flows of our own seasons and cycles. So I've actually honestly found that the more I rest during menstruation and the more social I am in the times when I feel like being social, and the more productive I am in the times when I feel like being productive, and the more all of that stuff works, the less ragey I feel and the more gratitude I feel in the autumn phase. I feel like a sense of achievement and a sense of celebration in my autumn phase because of all the work I've done to live in the ebbs and flows of my own energy and capacity. Right. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So what you can expect for my autumn retreat is we are going to reflect and celebrate. I've got a workbook that I'll do with you. It'll be a journaling experience, or we'll do a visualization. I'll do a journaling experience for you to review and reflect on the season and where you're at, and kind of set some intentions for what you might like to do. Like, we'll look forward to winter and how can we prepare in autumn to start to think about how we're going to rest and take stock and reduce the load. I'll share a little bit more about my seasonal philosophy, and we'll do a bit of like I said, we'll do planning. It's going to be really fun. I actually am not 100% certain on exactly what will be in the retreat because I've got about 4 or 5 hours worth of ideas that I want to do. So I need to kind of narrow it down because I want to be mindful of your time. I want you to get the best out of it. So 7:30 p.m. on the 15th of March, and it needs to be 2 hours, right? So what I'm going to do is the first 90 minutes will be like the session, and then that will be recorded. Then I'll pause the recording, and then if you attend live, I'll leave 30 minutes open for sharing and chats and Q&A, which may or may not be more valuable to you. You may not be into that sort of thing, but if you are, that will be available for you. And this is a great chance for us to chat and meet and talk about, what we're learning and what we're implementing. And yeah, so that's that. Obviously, everything I've talked about in this episode, all of the links that you'll need are going to be in the show notes for the episode, either within your podcast player or just go to my website, it's howtoliveslow.com, and you can follow the prompts there. You go to podcast and then you go to this episode, and all of the information will be there for you, including your own reflective workbook, which has a lot more deeper questions about how to reflect and set intentions in a deeper way that I haven't actually gone into here as much as I normally do, because I've gone on that many tangents, and I'm mindful to keep this episode, a little bit short. I have no idea what we're up to now, but I might leave it at that, and I'll let you get on with your own reflecting and intention setting. Do let me know how you go, and I can't wait to see you at my autumn retreat. I'm so excited. I really do hope that you will come along and join me for this experiment. I hope you're really well. Take so much care, and I will see you for my next episode. Bye. That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.